Wow. Yeah, so I'm really lucky to get to paddle some of the longest rivers on the planet. Just me for months at a time, in my boat, in my tent, rain, wind, snow, sunshine. Just me, 12, 13, 14 hours a day paddling. I take some photos, I film, I record in a journal, I talk to myself, I sing really badly to myself. Sometimes it gets really tough, but I love it. You know, it's my life. Am I saving the planet? Am I saving people's lives? No. I paddle. I walk a little bit. Look, I'm up here wearing flip-flops. If you point a camera at me, I'm going to do this. And I use the word stoked way too much. So, what do I know about making the world a better place? Some years ago, two friends and I paddled the entire length of the Amazon River from source to sea, 6,000 kilometers, 153 days. Snow-covered mountains, altitude sickness, some really tough white water, meeting narco-terrorists, getting shot at by narco-terrorists, getting shot at by the military who thought we were narco-terrorists. It was brilliant, you know, it was everything that we were looking for, everything that we had hoped for, pure adrenaline and adventure. But somewhere along this journey, my motivation changed for paddling these rivers, for going on these really long trips. We were in the most amazing place on earth, meeting the most interesting people, and we were ignoring it. We just wanted to get the next photo, the next waterfall, the next action shot. And it slowly dawned on me that this was a waste, you know. We had all these amazing stories around us, and we just left them there in the Amazon. I was in a really fortunate position that I could gather these stories and share them with a really big audience. These days, all the information that we get is neatly delivered to us in small packets by the mass media, and even smaller packets by social media. We take it in, process it very quickly, and move on to the next thing. I was in a place where I could gather amazing stories from amazing people and get them out there, get people thinking about our planet, about its people. But to what end? Why is it important for us as humans, as people, to learn about our planet? I really think that the more we understand our world, our fellow citizens, the more sympathy, the more empathy, and the more care we have for both. So a few years later, after the Amazon, I wasn't real keen to get back and live in a raft for 5 months. So I tried to think of something else. How can I go on an adventure and also share these stories? So I've long had an interest in the Middle East. At the time, Iraq, Afghanistan, northern Pakistan, the security situation, it wasn't looking too hot. Except right in the middle of those was Iran. So I decided, why not go there and walk across the country? 1,900 kilometers from north to south, a little over 60 days, just by myself. I was born in 1977, 2 years before the Islamic Revolution, 2 years before the relationship between the West and Iran took a real nosedive. So for 30 years, I personally and in Australia and much of the West was fed this image of Iran. Raging ayatollahs, women wearing their full-length black chador and burning US and UK flags. It wasn't a positive picture at all. So I wanted to really find out, is this true? Is it such a bad place? So starting on the Caspian Sea, I headed into the Alborz Mountains. Straight away, people would stop me. Are you okay? Do you need help, crazy person? Why are you walking through these mountains by yourself, you know? And yeah, I was okay for now. But crossing Iran in winter it can be tough. All the roads that lead through the mountains are closed under meters of snow. There's one motorway that tunnels through the mountains. But immediately I was starting to learn more about this country. You know, Iran, it's in the Middle East. It's a desert. It had mountains to rival the Himalayas, the Karakoram, the Andes, and the Rockies. And straight away I had stories to share, stories that we didn't hear all the time in the media. When I reached northern Tehran, I passed high fashion boutiques, Porsche and Ferrari dealers, mega mansions, restaurants which would never let my dirt-covered boots cross their doorstep, you know. The women, instead of being dressed in chador, wore skin-tight jeans, knee-high boots, fashionable jackets and headscarf which barely covered their hair. You know, what's going on here? You know, this wasn't the Iran that I'd been taught. In central Iran, in the plateau, I shared beer and whiskey with road construction workers, all in a country where alcohol is illegal. And these guys were so stoked that, you know, I would share the alcohol with them. They didn't have the heart to tell them I didn't drink. In the town of Natanz, I was pushed down these back alleys. It's pitch black, behind mud brick houses, pushing open these massive doors into a huge hall. There's yelling, there's screaming, there's music, there's smoke in the air. On one side, women crying. On the other side, men dressed in black with really good mustaches, also crying. Children running in between them, screaming and laughing. On stage, throats were being cut. Blood was spread on the floor. More yelling, more screaming. The Battle of Karbala and the death of Imam Hussein in 680 AD was being played out. Later, men would stand up and whip their backs with chains. Two things that I'd seen before on documentaries on TV. And at the time, these guys are crazy. This is such an extreme thing. But it wasn't like that at all. It was very family-orientated, very much part of the community, and it showed a real devotion to their religion. And it was certainly a story that I'll remember for the rest of my life, and a story that I really enjoyed to share with people. In southern Iran, in the Zagros Mountains, I was questioned by intelligence officers posing as journalists. The friendliest police, spies that I've ever met, you know. And my friends in Iran assured me that these guys were just bored. They had nothing to do in their small province, so why not question the crazy guy? Near the end of my journey, I was being stopped 5-10 times a day for offers of food, water, oranges, come to meet the rest of the family, and I feared that I would never reach the Persian Gulf. But I did, and I had discovered this country which before was just an unknown to me. Now I realize that it's just a beautiful country with beautiful people. When I got home, I shared the story as far and as wide as I could, schools, universities, at the Royal Geographical Society of London, anyone who would listen. And people were very responsive. And that made me more motivated to continue on my adventures and take the focus of me, the heroic adventurer, and put it on the people and the places that I met. Growing up in Australia, US pop culture was imported by the truckload. Fast food, fast coffee, movie stars, music stars. I had a feeling I could understand this country pretty well. In 2012, I went there and paddled the length of the Missouri-Mississippi River. 6,000 kilometers in 117 days, right across the country. And it revealed to me that pop culture doesn't always tell you too much about a country. Sometimes you have to look a little bit deeper. In 1804, the Corps of Discovery expedition, led by Lewis and Clark, set out from St. Louis and headed west, mapping and claiming more territory for the United States. And they headed up the Missouri River. They covered ground and country that I would cover myself, all of Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, and further south. At times I felt that I was as isolated and alone as when we were on the Amazon River. In the town of Great Falls, Montana, I had to leave the river. If I had passed there in 1805, there would have been 5 massive waterfalls pushing the river down, all within a 10-kilometer space. In 2012, 5 dams, waterfalls gone. Now, as a paddler and as an environmentalist, I'm staunchly against rivers anywhere in the world. But instead of using the platform that I had to share my personal agenda, I wrote about Electric City, the nickname for Great Falls. From 1890, it grew. It provided power for the city, for the state, and the region. It improved the economy. It created jobs. So I wanted to just present information to the audience and let them process it, let them make up their own mind. Later on, I headed south down the Mississippi to Memphis, Tennessee, the Bible Belt of the United States, where evangelical Christianity rules. And I was really lucky that friends invited me to attend church with them. Now, to call the Bellevue Church simply a church is a severe understatement. 7,000 seat capacity, gym, cafe, convention rooms, athletics tracks. They even live broadcast their services on TV and radio. And to watch the church members stand there with their arms raised to the sky, tears falling down their faces, it showed their devotion to their religion equally as much, if not more, than I'd witnessed in Iran. And my paddle across the United States, down its biggest river, gave me a real insight into how the country had grown and how looking past fast food, fast coffee, movie stars and music stars could really evoke images and stories that I really had to share. When I returned from the US, I lost a lot of motivation. I did radio interviews, magazine interviews, and the first question always was, when did you think you were going to die the most? And this wasn't really the message that I wanted to show. There were so many more stories that I wanted to share, but no one really wanted to know about that, at least the interviewers, you know. So I'm a little bit stubborn, so I thought I'm onto a good thing here. I'm going to keep at it. So last year I headed to Russia and I paddled the length of the Volga River, Europe's longest, 3,700 kilometers in 71 days. At the time, relations between Russia and the West were also plummeting thanks to the situation in Ukraine. So I had no idea of the reception I would receive. Just like Iran, I grew up in a media-led bubble, decaying nuclear reactors, crumbling apartment blocks, these grey and cold cities and a population to match. It didn't sound, really too enticing at all. Predictably, that wasn't my experience of Russia and the Volga. The upper Volga winds its way through pine forests. On one side, old wooden Soviet-era villages. On the other, mansions built by the infamous oligarchs. One with a pirate ship theme, the other with Roman and Greek aspirations. The middle Volga grows 40, 50, 60 kilometers wide. Storms would pop up over the hills and try their best to push me into the water. And at times it really was the heroic adventure against the wild outdoors. Huge cities like Volgograd, Astrakhan, Nizhny Novgorod, Saratov, Samara line the banks. Very neat promenades, people rollerblading, pushing their babies, and just generally relaxing. Unfortunately, in between these big cities, hundreds of towns and villages lay under meters of Volga water, flooded during the Soviet Union's push for economic development and hydroelectric power. Fishermen, families camping, and young Russians ready to party lined the riverbanks as well. Whenever I found myself within camping distance of these guys, it wasn't long before I had a plate of food and a big glass of vodka in my hand. For these guys, it's no problem sleeping the next day. For me, it meant a 6 a.m. start for another 14-hour day on the river. But for me, most of all, life on the Volga can be summed up as dacha life, an escape from the city, an escape from the stresses of life, to visit the Russian summer house, relax with family and friends, fishing, hunting, swimming, and forget about the real world just for a little while. Here on the Volga, life was beautiful and life was peaceful. So, am I saving the planet? Am I saving lives? Maybe. I would like to share all my stories from all these amazing places that I go to, not for myself, but just to add a little bit more information to the mass media, to the barrage of social media that we get, that my audience and the wider population can seek to understand and process. So I hope in that way that I am making the world a little better place. Thanks.